Greetings, BUSN 1360 Software Apps for Business Students. So welcome to Excel Chapter 2 Grader. And it's March 1st today as I'm recording this video, so I hope you're feeling lucky as we enter into Excel. But we really don't need luck because we've got the skill, and we're going to show it here. So I've already gone in and downloaded the files that we need for this assignment, and they've given us three. They've given us an Excel worksheet, they've given us a picture of the final product, and they've given us the instruction sheet. So let's start and jump into the instructions. I wonder if you've ever looked at the top part of the instructions. They give you a little overview of what you're actually doing. This is a really great assignment because you can use the spreadsheet that you create through this assignment in the future. You can change numbers and you can make this a payment plan for a car, for a house, or it could be for a phone. And especially if you have younger people in your house that you're trying to teach the value of money, some personal finance to them, this is a great spreadsheet to use with them to let them see credit cards and how they have an impact on certain financial decisions. So I think you're going to really like this. Okay, step number 1 says to download and open the file named Smartphone. And when I did this, I said, what? I wondered if I did something wrong. So there's my Excel spreadsheet because it's empty. Well, they could have told us to start with a blank Excel worksheet, but we are submitting this into the grader. So it's very important that we begin with the file that is coded specifically for us. You know, it has our last name as the first part of the file, but there's actually some things in the file that say this is your file, or in this case my file, and not somebody else's. So that's all right. We stay with this one. This is exactly right. I've gone ahead and opened that image file that they gave us because this is what the end product is going to look like. It's a FlexPay calculator. It's got an annual percentage rate, so a number of payments, and it looks like we're going to price out some different phones that we might choose from. We're going to find out what the payment is, and we're going to find out very quickly, let Excel tell us what's the highest payment, what's the average, and what's the lowest. And it might seem kind of obvious because we only have a couple phones, but imagine if you were the manager of a production line and you needed to see across a big long inventory of data and numbers and times and worker productivity, you needed to pull out the highest number and the lowest number and the average number. So what we're really learning there is how we can use Excel to find these numbers rapidly. So this is what the end product is going to look like, but it looks like we're going to have to type it all, right? Okay, so it tells us that we need to rename Sheet 1 FlexPay, and it says, hint, just double click the tab. So let me go back to Excel, and I'm just using the icons in my tray down here at the bottom because as things open, you'll see that they appear in that tray, and you can switch between the windows by simply clicking the icon, for example, Excel or Word. So it told me I'm going to double click this sheet. Oops. And when it's selected, notice it kind of has that purpley color and my cursor is in there blinking, but because it's selected, if I type, it'll just replace what's there, and they told me to type FlexPay. Whenever I'm done, remember I need to hit the Enter key. So I did that. Step 1 or Step 2, success. Step 3, it says to type FlexPay Calculator in cell A1 and then merge and center the title on the first row in the range A1 through C1. We're going to apply bold, 20-point font size, blue, accent 1 font color. Okay. In cell A1, FlexPay Calculator, and I'm going to press enter because when we finish typing in a cell, oftentimes we hit enter. You could use Control Enter or Tab, but I need to select cells A1 through C1, and they asked us to merge and center. They also told us to bold and apply 20-point font I'm moving through this quickly this time because I spent a lot of time in the first video making sure you were well versed in some of these steps. And then they want us to set the font color to blue, but not just blue. They want accent 1, and so that's up here in these theme colors, blue accent 1. Looks good. Let's go back to our instructions. We're on to step 4 already. It tells us to merge and center the range A2 through C2 and type inputs and then apply a thick outside borders. Special note for Mac users, so if you're a Mac user, make sure that you see that. So let's go back to our Excel spreadsheet. A2 through C2, they do want us to merge and center that, and they want us to, oh, they didn't tell us, oh, type inputs. Now I'm pressing the enter key. I probably should have pressed control enter because my cell is no longer selected, so I'm going to arrow back up. I'm on my keyboard and I use my arrow key to make sure that that cell A2 is selected. With that cell selected, they want us to apply a thick border, and in particular it's actually called thick outside border. So within this font group, if you can see, here's the border. Click on that little drop down, and here's the one they're talking about, thick outside borders. Now I can't really see it well. If I click away, I'm just clicking any other thing so that that's not selected. I just clicked away somewhere and you can see that thick border. Make sure I've completed all those steps. Back to the instructions. On to step 5. Step 5, it says type APR and number of payments in the range A3 through A4. Okay, I think that was 2 different columns. Let's look at our picture just to be sure. A3 says APR, and down here number of payments. Okay, that's just a good double check. A3, APR, pressing my enter key, # for number of payments. And then I'm going to press enter. I haven't saved, have I? Oh, that's violating my rule. Whenever I do something good, I need to save. So I've done lots of good things here. I need to make sure I save. Always save. I get the question a lot, how often should I save? And my answer is, well, how much do you want to redo if something, was to be lost? So you save as often, because so you don't have to redo the work, right? So save often is the short answer. On to step number 6, type 1.75% in cell B3 and 36 in cell B4, and then we're going to merge and center the range A6 through C6, and we're getting lots of steps here. We're going to type outputs and apply a thick outside border. Well, this seems like several tasks in one, so let's just do these one at a time. Let's go to cell B3, and they wanted us to, sorry, let me catch up on my printed instructions. There we go, step 6. They want us to type 1.75, and they want us to type that % symbol. That's a mathematical operator, and it changes that so that it is a percentage. And it's a formatting symbol, right? But in this case, it's actually also a mathematical operator, because that number is actually, we would have to slide the decimal back to the left twice, 0.0175. So that % has a special mathematical ability there. In cell B4, which is what is selected now because I hit my enter key, I'm going to type 36, and again I'm going to hit the enter key. Then they said merge and center the range A6 through C6. So I've selected it. Whatever is selected will be affected. I'm not at all concerned by the fact that that cell A6 is not filled in because I see the green border. A6 through C6 is selected. Merge and center. They said type outputs in there. So we have inputs, now we're typing outputs. I pressed my enter key. So I need to select cell A6 again. And already my border button remembers that I applied those thick outside borders, so I'm going to just click that again, and it's applied it. And I can't really see it unless I click away someplace. But that looks good. There was lots of steps. Let's save. Back to our instructions. We are on to step 7. In step 7 it says to type model in A7, price in B7, and payment in C7. Okie dokie. A7, we're going to type model. Now I know that I'm about to go across to cell B7, so I'm going to press my tab key and type price, and then tab key again into cell C7 to type payment. It's kind of interesting. If I press my enter key, watch where it goes. Excel is really smart and it's watching you work. So the normal sequence of entering numbers is, if you go across and then hit enter, you start at the beginning and go across and hit enter. So it's anticipating what cell you will need to go to next. So it followed my pattern. It said, okay, tab, 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 but then it knew to start at the next row. I think that's kind of cool. Excel is so smart. Let me save that. On to step 8. Okay, it says that we're going to type iPhone X in cell 8. We're going to type Samsung Galaxy in A9, LG V30 in cell A10, and then we're going to enter these corresponding prices, and then we're going to apply the currency number format. It says resize column A as needed to display all the text. Interesting. We're going to talk about that. Let's go back to Excel. Cell A8, which is currently selected for me. If not, you need to select that cell. I'm going to type iPhone, no capitalizations, iPhone X. Everything is lowercase. I'm moving down, so I'm going to hit my enter key. And Samsung, they are capitalizing, Samsung space Galaxy. Now, you can see, right, that that's too big for that cell, but that's okay. It's all in that cell. It's just the column is not wide enough. That's okay. Now I'm in cell A10. We're going to fix that in a minute. It said to type LG space V30. V as in Victor 30. And I'm going to hit enter again. And they said, I got to type some numbers. So let me go up here to B8. And yeah, and I'm going to type 949 and hit enter. And 799, I just moved my mouse out of the way. And then 650 and hit enter. And then we're going to select B8 through B10, and it said to apply the currency number format. Well, you may remember that in this number group that there are all kinds of options that you have. We looked at accounting in the last exercise. Now we're going to use the currency number format. We could have picked it out of that group. You see it, did you see it there? There's currency. But I wanted to show you that for some things like percent or the comma style, there are shortcut buttons because these are used a lot. So this very first one has the $sign. That's the accounting. Oh, I'm sorry, that's accounting. I don't want accounting. Oops, I told you wrong. Currency. I do need to use that. I apologize. Currency. So pick currency out of that. Now, what's the difference, you might ask, between currency and accounting? If you recall, the accounting format put the $sign away from the number. It lined all the $signs up along the left side of the column. Just a different kind of cleaner appearance. If you imagine accountants work with a lot of numbers, and so those $signs kind of run together with the numbers. So the accountants like to push that $sign over to the side. So that's what we did. Now, the last part of step 8 says resize column A as needed, and they did not give us a specific width to set it to. Now, you may know at this point that you can resize a column by taking your mouse and moving it all the way up, not in the cell. all the way up. And remember, we talked about the significance of the mouse changing shapes. We talked about four-sided arrow and thin black plus sign and puffy white plus sign. Well, now when I get my mouse all the way on top of the letter A, meaning column A, then now I have downward pointing arrow. And if I were to click, that would select the entire column, and I mean all the way down to the very, very last row of Excel. So first of all, that's one thing I can do with that downward pointing arrow, but that's not what I'm interested in. I don't really want that selected anywhere, so you're going to hear me say this a lot. Click away somewhere. Whenever we click away someplace, what we're actually doing is we're deselecting. Well, we deselect by selecting something else. A minute ago, I didn't want inputs selected anymore, that cell, so I asked you to click away someplace. When we didn't want outputs, this A6 selected, I said click away somewhere. Well, now when we select column A, if we don't want that selected anymore, we click away someplace. In other words, just select something that a cell that's empty, where it's not going to cause any harm. We're just clicking on kind of a blank area. Okay, I do want you to move your mouse back up on top of column A so that you have downward pointing arrow. Well, we're not done with that mouse changing shapes. As you move your mouse ever so slightly between the A and B column, kind of in the gutter, if you would, on the line between A and B, do you see that my mouse changes shapes yet again? Now, it won't happen if your mouse is down too low. It won't happen if your mouse is up too high. You've got to be in this kind of column label area up here, and as you move between the columns, you get this double-sided arrow. Okay? So double-sided arrow means click to drag, and it will let us drag the column really big. It will let us drag the column very small, and it does one other thing that's really cool. If you hold your mouse in that shape, and while you've got it in this double-sided arrow shape, keep it, just like that, double click. I think my hand was jumping a little bit. When I double clicked, what it tells Excel to do is to automatically resize that column to fit the largest piece of data in the column. Now, sometimes you have to be careful, because if you've typed a whole bunch into cell A1 and it stretches way out, it will resize that column way too big. But here, it understood that cell A1 is actually a merged cell, so it didn't pay that any mind. It just went looking on down and said, well, A2, that's also a merged cell, so I'm not going to pay that any mind. But it looked at cells that were individual cells, and it saw Samsung Galaxy, and it said that looks like the largest piece of text, and it expanded that column to fit that exactly. I'll do that again. I can even make it too big, and again, if I put my arrow in between and double click, I have to do it kind of with some command, right? And it snapped it exactly to that width of the largest piece of data in a non-merged cell. That looks good. Save. Let's see, that was step 8, and I think we did everything there. So let's go back to our instructions. Step 9. In cell 8, enter a PMT function. Well, this is the payment function to calculate the monthly flex payment for the first option. They mean the first phone. Be sure to use the appropriate absolute, relative, or mixed cell references. Now, this is something you should be reading about in your book. Very, very important that you understand the difference between an absolute, a relative, and a mixed cell reference. Use the fill handles to copy the function down through cell C10. Make sure each of the monthly flex payment is a positive value. So we've got really a lot going on here. Well, let's start out with cell C8, the payment function. And I'm going to focus just on this instruction so that we can demonstrate some things as we go, because this is the real world approach to how you would use a function. Okay, that's what I'm going to walk you through. Cell C8, C8 is right there. Now, let me make that a little bit bigger. I want to make sure that you can see it. And let's say that no one told me to use the payment function. I just believe that maybe I've heard of payments. I know I need to make a payment. I want to understand how to use a payment. I just know that there's something that will do it for me in Excel. I just believe that Excel can do it for me. Well, the best way to get started is to look up on your formula bar. And the formula bar has a special tool called the insert function. And it helps me when I don't know how to do a formula or a function. Now, what is a function as opposed to a formula? A function is some pre-built-in steps. Many people, when they start with Excel, are familiar with the AutoSum function. So instead of saying add this plus this plus this plus this plus that, sum is a function that adds things up for you so that you don't have to use the plus sign over and over. So functions just save you typing out a whole bunch of math steps. That's all a function does. Okay, so let's figure out how to do this. Now, as soon as I clicked that, yes, this dialog box appeared, but did you notice what happened here? An equal sign went into the formula bar. Why is that? Because we're telling Excel, I want to turn that calculator on. I want to go into the calculator mode. I'm ready to do some math. And all formulas start with an equal sign, right? So it went ahead and typed it in there because it knew we needed it. Now, this dialog box is great. It says search for a function, and it even tells us to type a brief description of what you want to do and then click go. Now, notice that that's already selected, so if I start typing, I don't have to delete that text first. I'm just going to start typing. It's going to replace it. Now, when it says type a brief description, here's what I would not want you to do. Don't type, I would like to buy a cell phone and I would like Excel to help me. No, no, no. It's kind of like Googling. You have to use some words that it's going to recognize. And I know I'm trying to do something with a payment, so I am going to speak a little bit of the language of Excel by typing in payment. Once I type that, you can press the enter key on your keyboard, which is what I do. You can also click go, but again, I tend to just press the enter key on my keyboard. Wow. I didn't even get close, and I'm kind of surprised. This is a list of functions that Excel is recommending for me, and there's a lot of them. Excel really missed the mark here. One thing I could do is where it says or select a category, I can click on this drop-down box, and I could say that I know it's going to be something financial. Maybe that would help me limit what I'm looking for. Even that doesn't seem to be helping too much, right? I'm kind of surprised by that, to tell you the truth. What if I typed monthly payment? No, rephrase your question. Amount of payment. Well, that was a little bit better. I typed in amount of payment. Now, let me use this just to help you understand the reason I'm showing you all this. The first thing it says to me is, how about FV? What is FV? Well, if I look down here at the bottom, it tells me that it returns the future value of an investment. I don't think that's what I want. I'm going to click this next one and see what it does. Well, this returns an interest payment. Well, that's interesting. Again, not quite what I want. So I could look at each one of these, and finally, again, this is assuming I didn't know anything. Finally, it tells me this calculates the payment for a loan based on a constant based on constant payments and a constant interest rate. And that's from that, hopefully I could figure out that that's what I wanted. Now, I told you I'd tell you real life. This is a little real life of how you start to figure out functions. I tell you another way in real life that you figure them out. When you work with a colleague who is very experienced with Excel, you start to ask them, hey, is there a way that Excel can calculate a loan payment for me? And they say, sure, why don't you try the payment function? And as you learn those functions, you remember them and you start to apply them. You've got to make that commitment to using them, and then you'll learn them, and they start to become part of your skill set. Another great way that you can learn functions in Excel, YouTube and Google, right? So put those things to work, because the more automated you can make your spreadsheets, you're going to get information that you never thought was possible before, and you're going to be able to complete your work faster. So starting with this insert function tool is just one way, and hopefully I'm giving you some ideas. And of course, taking this class is a great way. Now that I have found the function that I need, I've selected it. You can double click it if you want, or you can click OK. Now it says you've got to fill in the arguments of the function. Arguments mean inputs. You've got to give it the inputs. I'm not sure why they're called arguments. I think it dates back to some computer things, but arguments are what are the input values that are needed. Notice that 3 of them are bolded and 2 of them are not. The 3 that are bolded are required. It won't work unless you put something in for those 3 arguments where there's something is bolded. But the other 2 I can leave blank if I need to. Now it still will have impact, but you can leave them blank. Okay, the first one says rate, and when I look down here, it tells me exactly what it's looking for. It's the interest rate per period of the loan. For example, it says use 6 with the percent sign for quarterly payments at 6%, for quarterly payments at 6% APR. I can move this out of my way a little bit by pointing to the title area of the box. See how I'm not pointing on the title, I'm in this blank area. As long as I keep my mouse held down, I can move that around, because this is what I want to show you. Sometimes when people say the APR and they type a number, sometimes they don't put the percent sign. If they just typed 1.75 but they told you it's a percentage, Excel will not calculate this correctly. And so here they actually, if you can see that 6 and they actually put percent, so I might need to type in this rate area a percent symbol. Okay, I need to make sure that I'm expressing that this is a percent, whether that's on my spreadsheet or whether that's in my argument. It needs to be there. Now here's what they're actually telling me in this example. What they're telling me is that if somebody was going to make quarterly payments, then then that annual percentage rate needs to be divided by 4. Well, let's look over here at, these are cell phone values, and here APR means annual interest rate, right? This 1.75 is the annual interest rate. Well, let's look at the number of payments. There's 36 of them. Well, do you think I'm going to pay for my cell phone over the next 36 annuals? 36 years? No. To me, that 36 looks like monthly payments. So here we have an annual interest rate, but our payments are expressed in months. And I think what we're really wanting here is the monthly value. So that means that we need to say not an annual interest rate, but we need a monthly interest rate. How are we going to get that? We're just going to divide by 12. Now be careful here, because I can hear some of you reaching for your calculators. No. You're not even going to type that the rate is 1.75. With this dialog box open and with your insertion point blinking in this rate argument, see it? You're just going to go over here and click B3. Never type a value into a formula if you can instead put it on the spreadsheet, because in this way we can change it without having to go into our formula and make really delicate edits. We'll just change the value on our worksheet. Plus it'll be so much easier to see. We won't have to go into the formula to see what the interest rate is. It's right there on our spreadsheet. Now, it's telling us 1.75% is actually 0.0175, and that's right. But again, this is annual. So what do? Well, we're just going to divide by 12. That is how you convert an annual percentage rate to monthly. Okay, so we've done it. NPER. What's an NPER? Well, if I look down here, it says it's the total number of payments for the loan. Well, have you ever said, I think I can pay it off in 18 months, but no, it might take me 36, but no, maybe 24, maybe 12, right? Again, we don't want to type that number of payments. We want to put it on our spreadsheet so that we can easily see the value. It's not in our formula, and so that we can change it later on. So my cursor is flashing with here at NPER. Click B4. Now, do you see what's going on? Excel is building our function for us. Our last required value is present value. Well, PV, present value, is the total amount that a series of future payments is worth now. Basically what they're saying is, how much are you trying to borrow? Well, for the iPhone, it's going to be whatever value is here in cell B8. So I just click it. Now, looking a little bit ahead, Excel has already calculated the answer for us. It looks like that payment is going to be $27.08. But can you see that negative sign there? That's kind of weird. Have you ever had somebody say, you owe me negative $27.08? They probably don't say that. So if you are wondering about that, this is a great time where, again, you want to be looking at your book. So I already opened up the book, and it was so easy to find the function. Remember, if you're coming up to the title page, you just click on the contents, you scroll down till you find Excel, and we're now on Excel Chapter 2, which is Formulas and Functions. As I looked through that, I saw this functions. Here's logical lookup and financial functions. When I expanded that, I saw here's using payment function. When I clicked on that, I'll click it again just to demonstrate. Close that to get it out of the way, and it tells me all about that payment function. But at the very bottom of the page, it says when utilizing the payment and other financial functions in Excel, the results are often displayed as negative numbers. This happens because Excel understands accounting cash flow, and the negative value represents a debt or an outgoing monetary stream. It's important to understand why this happens, and to understand in some situations this should be a positive number. Because in conversation we do not typically say, you owe me negative $27, right? So here's how they say to fix it. This can be manipulated by changing the PV argument, the present value argument of the payment function, between positive and negative values, or by adding a minus sign in front of the payment function. So these are the two ways that they suggest that we can solve it. They say either put a negative sign in front of the in front of the present value argument, or just put a minus sign in front of the negative, or the front of the make the payment function negative. Okay. Well, why don't we, since we have this dialog box open right before the B8, I'm just going to go ahead and type that negative sign. See that? And that changed this value. So now it's positive $27.08. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, I told you I wanted you to approach this in the way that we do in the real world, which is we think through something. And especially when you're new to Excel, you've kind of got your hands full thinking, well, okay, this is a function. How do I make this work? And you've learned some new tools. You've learned the insert function. And you should be proud that you have a function that's in there that's working really great. And it is. And notice that when we clicked OK, now we see the results and we're still in the same cell. It didn't move the cell down at all. Okay, I'm going to actually scoot this up a little bit. Whoops. So they asked us in the instructions instructions on step number 9. They said, first of all, they told us let me go back actually to that. They said in cell C8 to make that function, right? And I said, let's just concentrate on that first sentence. And so we did. We completed that. Now we need to look at the second sentence. It says, be sure to use the appropriate absolute, relative, or mixed cell references. So what does that mean? Well, currently we are using relative references. And what that means is that as I look up at this formula, that it's just the cell name. There's no special formatting applied to the cell name. It's just the cell name. B3 is a cell name. B8 is a cell name. Yes, it has a negative sign in front of it. That's a mathematical operator. It just changed, it used a negative value. But these cell names are just cell names. That means they're relative. And by relative, what we mean is relative to where the answer is, use cell B3, which is the annual percentage rate. So Excel knows go over 1 and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, relative to where you are now. That's how it got cell B3. And it says for cell B4, go over 1, relative to where I am, over 1 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. Finally, it said relative to where I am now, get cell B8, which is over 1. Okay, that's what they are. It said for us to be aware, are they relative or absolute references? Then it said use the fill handle to copy the function down through cell C10. And this is where the mistakes usually happen, because we're in a rush to get the answer. And we look at the cell and it's selected. Now, if we are down here, if we've hit the Enter key, we can't start looking at the fill handle. We have to select. Remember, what we select is what we affect. And what we want to affect is we want to affect that formula into the other cells. We want to copy that formula. So I've already talked in depth about how careful you need to be with the mouse. If I move my mouse over the border, I have four-sided arrow. I've got to make sure I get it right on the dot, and that dot is thin black plus sign, and that is the fill handle. I'm going to press my mouse button down and drag. What? Why did it give me errors? Remember I told you that Excel people will drive you crazy because they'll click, click, click down here, but they're not looking here, they're looking here. Okay, I've selected one of these formulas with an error, and that's what this is. This is an error. Pound, if it just has a whole bunch of those hash marks, tags, for like Twitter and that kind of thing, that's different. That means your column is too small. This is an error. It says pound num, and it means there's a number error. Something with the numbers is not right. Well, let's look at my formula. Now I'm going to tell you a careful thing here. I like to look at my formulas to troubleshoot them, which is a very real world thing. Anytime you use formulas, you're going to end up troubleshooting. So you might as well learn how to do this. I like to click in my formula, because when I do, Excel color codes the formulas, the pieces of the formula, and highlights the cells. So B4 is in blue, and you see that there's a little blue edge, and it's saying I've got this right here. B5 is in red, and it's pointing to an empty cell, and then B9 is actually correct. It's one over. Well, now here's where you got to be very, very careful. Don't click. If you start clicking around at this point, you're going to change the values in your formula, and you don't want to do that. So to get out of this, that highlighting was so helpful, but to get out of this mode, you can either hit the escape key on your keyboard. I do that a lot, the escape key on your keyboard, or you can click this X. To me, this X looks like a delete button. It makes me nervous, so I don't like to click on that. I like to click escape. I like to press escape on my keyboard. Okay, so once again, what did we tell the formula to do? Well, when we were up here, the one that was correct, we said go over 1 and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And do you remember how the first cell that was being used in our messed up formula was this, not the annual percentage rate, but this one? So what did it do? Well, it went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because relative to where the answer is, that's what we told it to do. And hey, that was great for the very last piece of the formula, which was B9. So in our instructions, when they told us, pay attention to whether you are using relative or absolute references, here's what we're seeing. The relative reference to the interest rate, and actually, if you remember, we were even pointing to an empty cell. So instead of this being where it's supposed to be on 1.75 and then the red being on 36, the second value in our formula, instead they're off. Those should not be, I don't like using that, those should not be relative. This one, though, worked correctly. This 799, it should be relative. Now, again, I'm going to caution you. The temptation here is to do two things that are wrong. The first thing that people do that is wrong is they just start changing the formulas. They say, okay, Excel didn't do what it should have done. I guess I'm just going to have to go up here and I'm going to have to edit the formula. Don't do that. You're going to, what if I have 10 more phone models that I'm going to put in there? Right? 10 different houses, 10 different bank loans that I'm considering. I don't want to have to keep modifying that formula 10 more times. I want Excel to copy it for me. So don't manually change the formulas each and every time. Here's the second mistake, and this is a doozy. A lot of people now correct just this flawed formula, and then they try to copy it. Still not right. The problem is with the original formula. You say, yes, but it gave me the right answer. But when you copied it, it messed up. And if it was right to begin with, then we could copy it. Okay, what am I talking about? What do we mean? When we want a cell not to be referenced relatively, we don't want it sliding all over the place as we copy the formula around. We want it absolutely, positively to always use cell B3 even when we copy that formula. Well, to make this an absolute reference, you simply lock down the column and you lock down the row. So an absolute reference is $B, and then this is weird, but you're even going to put a $sign inside the cell name. So it's $B, $3. Do you see how I did that? That means lock the column, lock the row. Okay? $B, $C. I'm going to start with just that, and I'm going to press enter because I've modified my formula. Let's copy it again. Go back to your original formula. That's the one we fixed. Get your fill handle, thin black plus sign, press and drag. Still have errors, don't we? Okay, but remember I told you those Excel people, they're always clicking down here, but they're looking up here. Notice that cell B3 stayed correct as we copied it down. It was correct each time. The problem is, if I click in my formula, one of the messed up ones, and then I click inside it, it looks like B3 is correct, but it looks like my number of payments, and I'm going to press escape, Let's look at the next one. My number of payments is moving. See how that red box moved from here to here to here? It's still moving. I need that number of payments to absolutely positively, the formula needs to absolutely positively lock on to 36. So, or to cell B4. So what did we say was the right thing to do? Go back to the original formula, the one that's correct, because it's actually not correct. If it was correct, it would have copied correctly, and it didn't. With that correct cell selected, go up to my formula. The cell that needs to be locked, absolutely, the column and the row needs to just be locked, is cell B4. So $B, $4. Absolutely lock that column and that row. I'm done editing my formula. I'm going to press the Enter key. Now let's try it one more time. Hey, how about that? Now, never trust those numbers. I know that Excel can do the math correctly. I'm not worried about a mathematical error on Excel's part. I'm worried that I've entered something incorrectly. So I'm going to be one of those Excel users that drives you crazy, and I'm going to click down here, but I'm going to look up here. The original formula said B3 was the annual percentage rate. B3, B3, B3. The original formula said that B4 was the number of payments. B4, B4, B4. Congratulations, you're one of those annoying Excel people who clicks down here and looks up there. Yay, welcome to the club. We're going to do it one more time because what's the other value we need to check? The other value is not absolute. In fact, we want it to be relative to where the answer is. Relative to where the answer is, the price is to that cell on the left. Relative to this answer, I need to get that price. Relative, you see, it's always 1 over. So this one should be B8, and it is. This one should be B9, and it is. This one should be B10, and it is. Yay! Here's what you've done. You've used absolute references, and you've used relative references. It's relative if there is no other indication. It's absolute if you have put $1 before the letter and $1 before the number. So $B, $4, $B, $3. These are absolute references. Let me hit escape. But they cautioned us on one other thing. They said absolute or relative or mixed. Well, you get absolute. That means $B, $3. $B, $4, right? $2 signs, absolute. What is a relative one? If I go back to my spreadsheet, what exactly did I need to lock down? Did I need to lock both the column? Was the column changing? Do I need to lock the column and the row? Or just the row? Or just the column? When your instructions in your book talks about a mixed reference, that's what they're talking about. Let me go back to my original formula. Let's say I am going to do a mixed reference, and I'm just going to put $B. And so I've got $B and then the number 3, but only $1 sign. That is a mixed reference. In fact, while we're in this formula, what if instead of $B, $4, I'm going to put the $sign only before the row number in that cell. So you see how I kind of have it two different ways? Both of those cells now represent mixed references. Lock only the column or lock only the row. Okay? Wherever the dollar sign is what's locked. Now, I don't expect my original formula to have any errors. It's just when I copy it that I'll see errors if it's not set up correctly. So I'm grabbing that fill handle and I'm copying to replace those existing formulas. Now, this is a little different because a bunch of those hashtags is not an error. It just simply means it's a very large number. Well, I could expand that. $2,000. That's a big monthly payment for a $799 cell phone. I might be getting scammed on that one, right? Can I undo that column width? Yeah. I want to make, they might mark me off for changing the column width, so I have to be careful. Okay. What that means is something went wrong. Of course, then it makes this cell phone very attractive because the 1806 is a very low payment. How do I troubleshoot that problem? I need to click inside the formula and let Excel help me. Okay, it looks like the $B5, the annual percentage rate, it has moved. Do you see how it's in blue right here? And this is the second formula that I copied. It went down 2 cells. It changed rows twice. That's not right. But now look at B4. B4 stayed exactly where it was supposed to. Let me hit escape. Let's look at this other one. Well, I can sure see why that was a big number, because I've got B4 times B4. 36 divided by 12, but is one of my arguments, not times, I shouldn't have said times, I'm sorry, B4 divided by 12, and then here's B4 again as an argument. It seems like as we copied, I hit escape, as we copied this formula down from one cell to the next, remember how we checked a minute ago? It should be B3, and it is. It should be B3, but it's B4. It should be B3, but it's B5. So when I locked the column with that dollar sign, it really didn't change anything because the column is not what needs to be locked. It was the row, right? Because relative, we're only stepping over once and then going up. It was the row that needed to be locked. If now I look at my original formula and I say the row needed to be locked at B4 for the number of payments, well, if I look at my next formula, it is locked. It's still in column B. That part is relative. But it's the row that had to be locked. Okay? So I wanted you to see that that dollar sign affects what is being locked. Is it just the row? Is it just the column? Well, I'm going to go back to my original formula, which is C8. And I don't know if the grader is going to take off. If so, we'll come back and we'll change it where only the row is locked. But I like to, when I am using these references, unless I have a really specific need to lock only the row or only the column, I lock them both. Because I just find the certainty of an absolute reference to be what I want, unless I have a specific need to make it relative. So I'm making both of those absolute. Fixing the original does not make the others update. I need to go back to my corrected formula and I need to copy it again. I hope that was helpful and not confusing, but we're talking about absolute references versus relative references. And in between there's mixed, meaning you can lock either the row or the column. But by and large, you're going to use two dollar signs, one before the column and one before the row. And we double check and it looks good now. Save that. Let's go back to our instructions. Was that the last part? Yeah, make sure that we have positive values and that we copied it. Okay, so we're ready to go on to step 10. And step 10 says that we're going to type these three things, highest payment, average payment, lowest payment, in cells A12 through A14. So go back to Excel. I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit, A12, and A12 was highest payment. Make sure you do not capitalize that second word. I hit my enter key, and then I'm going to capital A, average, lowercase payment, and then finally capital L, lowest, lowercase payment, and enter. That was an easy step. I like those. Let's press save. Back to our instructions. In cell B12, it says to use the max function to calculate the highest flex payment in cell B13. Use the average function for average payment, and use the min function for the lowest payment. So this is one place where learning to speak Excel is going to make your life easier. High and low, yes, they're common words, but if you start thinking max and min, you will be able to find the functions much more readily. Okay, so let's go back to Excel and let's click, was it just in cell B? Yeah, B13. Okay, many ways to do this. I could go back to my insert function, but also oftentimes we use this AutoSum button and we just click right on top of AutoSum, which of course is fine if we want to sum. But next to that is a small drop down arrow, and you can see average. There's a count, and it very specifically counts numbers. It does not count alphabetical things, but it counts numbers. And there's max and there's min. So here's max, and it has filled in our function, and it's asking us, is this correct? And if this was correct, we would just hit enter and we would be done. But it's actually not correct. We've got an extra cell in there. Yes, that cell is empty and it's not going to currently have a value impact, but it might in the future. So we need to be careful about not having exactly what we want to be added up. Now I will point out what Excel is doing. All formulas start with an equal sign, so it's gone ahead and put that in. Then there's our function, and our function is called max, so it typed max. And here's another little thing to remember. All functions have parentheses. So it's already got an opening parenthesis and a closing parenthesis, and inside those parentheses is what it's going to take the max of. Well, that range, it guessed, is B8 through B11. And that's not right. So ignore these little things. These are called marching ants. Ignore the marching ants and just select what you need to select. Ignoring anything, just click and drag. Do you see how it fixed it? When you have what you want, hit your enter key, and there you go. Now, what else do I need? I need average. And if I have my cell selected, and let's see, I'm on home, I go up to my AutoSum, and here's an average function. Now look at that. Excel guessed, and it guessed completely wrong, but I'm not even going to pay attention to that. I see that it's typed in the equal sign. I see it's typed my function name, which is average. I see it has my parentheses, and inside the parentheses it's supposed to understand what I am supposed to act upon. What am I supposed to average? Well, you're supposed to average these things. And you know what? I just realized I made a mistake. I made a mistake. It said payment, not price. Oh, drats. Let's change it. I'm going to click back in cell B12. And here's my formula up here, and it's a little wrong. No problem. Click inside the formula because you're going to edit it. And the range should not be B8 through B10. It should be C8 through C10. So when I'm up here, why don't I just click, and I can use my delete key, however you want to do it, C8 through C10. Doesn't that make sense? Yes, I see all this stuff flashing around. Ignore it. Don't worry about that at all. Hit enter. Isn't the highest payment $27? So we can confirm that that is it passes the sniff test. It makes sense, right? What is this average payment? Well, that's not right. So I have this selected. Let me go up here to my formula, and I'm just going to edit it. If you prefer, you could delete the formula and you could enter it in correctly, but I wanted to show you how to edit these formulas because you're going to do that a lot. Finally, we're at the lowest payment, B14. So I'm clicked in that cell. I'm going to go back up to AutoSum, use this down arrow, and I'm going to pick men. And there it's guessing, and it's guessing wrong. Ignore that. Select C8 through C10. Press enter. Okay? As you get to learn these functions, there's no law that says that it only works if you go through the menus. You could, I'm going to just press delete, you could come to cell B14 and you could type, all formulas start with an equal. I'm trying to find the minimum, and so that's men. Doesn't have to be capital. All functions have parentheses, no space, no space. Men immediately, parentheses. Then I can use my mouse to select just like I normally do, and then I would close parentheses. So I do that to show you there's no magic about using the buttons or having this pop up a dialog box. It's knowing the words. It's knowing that all formulas start with an equal sign. It's knowing the name of the function, that all functions have parentheses, and inside the parenthesis goes the argument, right? You can see that in our payment function. All formulas start with the equal sign. There's our function immediately followed by parentheses, and then what it acts upon goes inside. Okay? If you are struggling with a formula after you've typed it in, pressing the Insert Function dialog box opens that helpful dialog box. So you can always go back into that. For example, as we were editing those formulas and putting absolute values in, I wanted you to get comfortable working on this formula bar, but I could have selected this and clicked Insert Function, and if I find it easier to work, make edits this way, I can certainly do that, typing them in there. Okay, so when you can go back into that insert function dialog box. I think we're good there. I'm going to click on Save. Let's go back to our instructions. And we're on to step 12. We're almost done. Insert a footer with your name on the left side, the sheet name in the center, and the file name, code, of course, on the right side of the worksheet. Now, here it says sheet name in the center. I'm fairly sure they want the code there as well. Okay, let's go back to our spreadsheet. Do you remember how to do this? Page layout. And personally, I just always go to this page setup button right here. There's my header footer tab, and I'm sorry, they wanted that as a footer. Custom footer. Left section, they said type your name. My pretend student name is Betty Baker. In the center, they wanted the worksheet. Do you remember that one from the last chapter? And on the right side, they wanted the file name. And click OK. I see the preview. Looks a little messy, but that's because this little box is very small. Click OK. Let's save that. The moment of truth. Let's see if I followed all the steps correctly, and if we're going to get 100, I'm going to close that. And I'm going to go to my, remember I always close it, I'm going to go back to my course materials. I've already opened, remember course materials is the preferred way to access your information, not calendar, not to-do list. Course materials, and find your Excel 2 folder. That way you have ready access to your ebook, to your audio PowerPoints, to your quizzes and simulations. And let's click that. We've already done the downloads, so all we have to do is submit our file again, or for the first time. Oh, look at that, I about submitted the wrong one. That's Excel 1. We're on Excel 2. Upload, wait for success, submit. Sometimes that close button just doesn't work, so I'm going to close that, and I like to go, oh, let's see, I can click on my 3 dots and view submissions. Yay, 100% the first time. That's a good feeling. So I hope this was helpful in walking you through the information that you need to do your very best and to learn your very most for Chapter 2 Excel. Appreciate you folks, and we'll be talking to you later.